They're very significant, but let's take a look at them. Now begin with Chile, right near you. The protests in Chile are over the residue of the Pinochet dictatorship. It left in place features that are very destructive to the population. Now, bear in mind that the Pinochet dictatorship was the first example of neoliberalism. The dictatorship was strongly supported by the so-called libertarian economists, Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek, the great thinkers of what is called libertarianism in the West. They were the architects of the Chilean economy, which actually was a disaster. Within about 5 years, they had destroyed the Chilean economy. It was in a worse, by 1982, the state had to take over more of the economy than it had under Allende. But the fascist principles remained. The economy was turned back to traditional elements who managed to rescue it, but the effects of the fascist dictatorship remained. Destructive, privatized pension system, privatized, underfunded educational system, social controls, all remained. The Chilean uprising wants to dismantle those, to turn the country into a functioning democracy, which will overcome the enormous inequality, which is horrifying, the enormous poverty in a pretty rich country, the repression, get rid of all of that. That was the first example of neoliberalism. Then, a few years later, it hit the rest of the world with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who inaugurated the neoliberal era around the world. It has been extremely harmful to populations everywhere it's been applied. So take the United States. There has just been, the neoliberal period began with Ronald Reagan's announcement that government is the problem. We have to remove decisions from government. The decisions don't disappear. They go somewhere else. Where? To the hands of private power, private corporate power, which is unaccountable to the public. So we move decisions from government, which is partially accountable to the public, to private power, which is totally unaccountable. Then comes Milton Friedman, the economic guru of neoliberalism, who had just a few years earlier helped to devastate Chile. He wrote a crucial, important article right at the same time in which he said, the responsibility of a corporation is solely to enrich itself. It has no responsibilities to the community, to the workforce, just enrich itself. So put all this together. Decisions have to be taken away from government, put in private hands. The private hands have the sole responsibility of enriching themselves. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going to happen. And this happened in one way or another over most of the world. In fact, there's just a recent study in the United States by the most respected research institute, the Rand Corporation, quasi-governmental. It tried to estimate how much wealth was transferred from the working class and the middle class to the very rich during these 40 years. Their conclusion is $47 trillion transferred from working people and the middle class to the very super rich. Something similar. What it means is tremendous concentration of wealth in the top fraction of 1% of the population. For the majority of the population, stagnation, decline of benefits, precarious work, destruction of democracy as power accumulates, anger, resentment, fertile territory for a demagogue like Trump to come and say, I'll be your savior, when he's actually working for the perpetrators of the tragedy. Similar things are happening elsewhere. You look at the uprisings all around the world. Good part of the reason is anger, resentment, fear, discontempt for existing institutions, all of which is justified. And out of this are coming significant social movements. And take the United States again. After the George Floyd murder, there was a spontaneous uprising of a kind that had never happened before. Within days, it became the largest social movement in American history. Very strongly supported. 2/3 of the population supported it. That's far beyond what Martin Luther King achieved at the peak of his popularity. It was black-white solidarity, people working together for significant changes. Now, this didn't come out of nowhere. It came from years of organizing, activism on many different topics, including the horrible legacy of racism. It was all prepared, burst out at the time of the massacre. Same in Chile. The student strikes in Chile have been going on for years. The protests against the awful pension system and deterioration of social benefits and radical inequality have been going on for years. Now they've taken a spectacular form, calling for total change in the dictatorship, in the constitutional system left by the dictatorship. Similar things are happening in Europe. These are very important developments. And in fact, the future of the world, it's not an exaggeration to say that the future of the world depends on them. There's a conflict going on, major conflict, kind of an international class conflict over what kind of world will emerge from the pandemic. Will it be a continuation of the neoliberal assault, which has been very harmful to the general population, or will it be a move towards decent social democratic outcomes in which policy is oriented towards the needs of people, populations, kind of thing that happened in Uruguay under Mujica? Will it be like that, or will it be more of the neoliberal disaster? And if it moves towards